Hi, my name is Aditya Palaniappan, and in this presentation today, I'm going to talk to you about open source software. Starting. This is going to be the overview and today's agenda regarding today's presentation. First, we're going to go over the definition of open source software. Then we're going to go through a brief overview of open source softwares. Then we're going to talk about the open source initiative. Then we'll talk about the open source licenses and open source, how to achieve success through open source softwares, and some of the advantages and disadvantages regarding open source. But before we can even start with anything, we need to start with the basic bare bones, and that is what is open source software? And that's what our first slide's about. This is the definition of open source software. Obviously, you guys can read it off the slide. However, there's still a couple of other key terms and words in this definition that might be a little confusing to people that are unfamiliar with this term. So, the first question people might have is, what is a source code? So, a source code is software that consumer users never see. It's code that computer programmers can manipulate to change how a piece of software works. So it's basically the beginning software that it's the beginning code for the software, and then from that other users can manipulate it to enhance it or change it to their liking. So that's the basic overall definition of an open source software. If this is still a little confusing to you, here's a metaphor that might make it a little bit relatable. It's like a recipe. The open source software is like a recipe. So you have the basic recipe, which allows you to get the basic uh, whatever food you want. However, different people might have different ideas on what they want to do. So some people might like their food a little bit more spicy, so they might enhance the recipe to accommodate that. Or some people might like it a little bit more sweet, so they might enhance the recipe to make it a little bit more sweet. So you take the basic recipe, which is like the source code, and then you can manipulate it to your liking. And that's essentially what the open source software is. So moving on, let's talk about the overview of open source software. So open source is publicly accessible, which means that anyone can access it. And so this allows the second part of the bullet point to be true. And this is a major part of open source software, and that it's collaborative. So open source software is a collaboration between many, many different individuals who work on the source code, modify the source code into making it and keep improving it until you can get more complicated results and you can get the software to do greater things. This also allows for the third bullet point, which is easy improvements. By having so many people work on it, you can cut down the number of mistakes that occur. While one person might not catch a little bug in the software, another person will, and so on and so on. And because of this, because of this inclusiveness of this community, and because so many people and your peers are reviewing the software, this allows open source to be so highly successful. And this collaboration allows the number of mistakes to be cut down. It allows the creativity to be ever non-ending, and it's just always going to get you great results. The open source initiative. So because open source is so publicly accessible and it's so focused on collaboration, there isn't a whole lot of regulation involved in it. However, there is the OSI, which is the Open Source Initiative. So the Open Source Initiative promotes and protects open source software development and communities. So basically, it's meant to protect the code, it's meant to protect the communities, and it's supposed to help develop open source software. So the open source initiative even has their own definition. And the open source initiative is meant to protect the source code. It's supposed to enhance and enable free redistribution of the software, and it's supposed to maintain the integrity to the author's source code. So basically, what this means is that the open source initiative wants it to make it easier to redistribute the software that we're talking about. It wants to make the source code more protected against because the source code is the most important thing. So that one needs to be protected, and that's what the open source initiative is focusing on. It wants to enhance and it wants to protect the source code, and it wants to maintain the integrity of the author's source code, which basically relates to what I just said. It just wants to protect what the source code is. Open source licenses. So these licenses must comply with the open source definition, which I just stated on the previous slide, which is basically that it wants to protect the source code, it wants to enhance redistribution, and it wants to maintain integrity to the author's source code. And basically, there's other parts to this. The open source initiative definition. However, there's a lot to it. These are what I found to be the three main things. So these licenses must comply with the open source definition, and so then the licenses must go through the open source initiative license review process, which is they have their own review process to make sure these licenses can go through. But what are the points of those licenses? Like, why do we need licenses? And so basically, the licenses allow software to be freely used, modified, and shared. So basically, the licenses once again enhance and protect the distribution, the free redistribution, and allows for the modification of the software. So how to achieve open source success? So as I've said before, open source primarily is valued by the collaboration. The amount of collaboration that you can get with open source software is unbelievable, and because of this, we need to maintain collaboration. With collaboration, we can easily catch errors because we have so many different people working on it. It is unlikely that so many of these people are going to fall for the same error over and over again. So bugs are going to be greatly reduced. Once again, creativity is going to be like never ending. You have thousands and thousands of people working on this one software, and you can have so many different ideas on how this software, the direction of this software needs to go. And because of this, the creativity is always going to be there. So achieving open source success is all about collaboration. If you can collaborate with your peers, then you're going to achieve so much success with open source softwares. And because of this, um, and because of your collaboration, you're always going to have new ideas and new direction on how the code's going to go. The benefits of open source software. Well, there's so many benefits of open source software. You get easy control because you get the source code, and from the source code, you can control whatever you want with it. And if it doesn't work out, then no big deal. Then you can start over back with the source code, and then you could try again. That's one of the great things about open source is that you have the source code and you can change it if you want. And if it doesn't work out, then you get to try again. You still have the source code. Because of this allows training to be easier. With training, as I've said before, like once you have the source code, you can try your new ideas. You can keep trying it out. If it doesn't work, you get to try it again, and you have a base point, and you can keep trying to work on it. And because of this, it makes training so much easier. Security and stability. While it might seem that open source code isn't so secure because of how openly and publicly accessible it is, this is not the case. It's so secure because once again, the number of bugs on there is going to be so limited. There's not because once again, no one's going to fall for the same bug over and over again. You're just going to have a more stable, a more secure system with so many people working on it. It's so big, it's so publicly accessible that there's just not going to be a lot of errors, and you're just going to have really great software all the time because of the amount of collaboration that you have with people. The impact of open source software. So there's a lot of impact. Like open source is everywhere. You see it in science, you see it in education, you see it in government, you see it in manufacturing. So this, as a matter of fact, this previous summer, I was in a research lab at the Washington University School of Medicine, and with that, we used open source software all the time. One of the programs that I had to use was MATLAB. And with MATLAB, you have so many different softwares that are already programmed into your computer. And we used this software. And then some of my peers, they developed new software using the old software to enhance what we can do with it. So that's just one of the many examples that you see open source software. Like I saw the benefits with it this summer when I was researching at WashU, and it like made me realize how much power open source software has. This is my works cited page. I really hope that you guys can realize the impact and the importance that open source software has on our world today. I hope you guys had a better understanding of what open source software is, and hopefully you found this presentation helpful.